A writer and director M. Night Shyamalan showed off the poster for his upcoming movie, Glass, on Twitter Friday. The movie brings together characters from 2000's Unbreakable and 2016's Split. At CinemaCon in April, Glass star Sarah Paulson said, "What if these real-life supervillains and superheroes are somehow locked up together? I mean, what could go wrong?" Entertainment Weekly reported. Shyamalan also said that he and the cast will be at Comic-Con in July. Glass is slated to be released Jan. It looks like the first trailer for M. Night Shyamalan's Glass will debut on July 20th during that day's San Diego Comic-Con panel. "I don't know if it will be attached to Mamma Mia, Here We Go Again. If that turns out to be the case, I suppose that means that the Split 2 Unbreakable 72-for-1 sequel is secretly a musical? Oh hell, now I really want it to be a musical." Jokes that I'm secretly dead serious about aside, Shyamalan just dropped a teaser poster for Glass, with a note about getting your fix before July 20. "I meant what I said about the Glass trailer being an appropriate attachment for Incredibles 2. But there is still something fitting about the trailer dropping on the 10th anniversary of the domestic release of Chris Nolan's The Dark Knight, even if we may not see it in theaters until maybe the 27th with Mission: Impossible Fallout. Anyway, the reason for the season at the moment is this lovely teaser poster for Universal Comcast Corporation and Walt Disney's Glass. Since Unbreakable was a Walt Disney release back in 2000, while Split was a Blumhouse flick that turned into a super smash last year, the two most powerful studios in Hollywood at the moment are sharing the wealth on this one. Unbreakable was an ahead-of-its-time cult flick, a movie that treated the modern superhero origin story as a deeply serious adult drama just as the second phase of superhero comic book movies was kicking into gear. At the time, the notion of a dead serious superhero movie was so unlikely that Unbreakable opened with a text screen explaining the extent to which folks consume comic books. 18.5 years later, the superhero movie is less of a novelty, and it's certainly less of a novelty when a big-budget movie takes it seriously and approaches it in terms of a modern myth or metaphor for adult power fantasies. But if Incredibles 2 can thrive in a world where everyone is special, then the Blumhouse-budgeted Glass should be okay too. At the very least, you've got Split, which was popular with the kids, and Unbreakable, which was a big deal with their parents or older siblings, for a kind of cross-generational interest with not a little nostalgia for a time when movies like Unbreakable really felt like events. On one hand, I imagine the movie would have performed a bit better in North America had it opened a few years later. On the other hand, a key part of its enduring appeal was that it took these stories seriously at a time when no one else did. It's no secret that I had no interest in a sequel to Unbreakable, feeling that the origin story was the most interesting part. Shyamalan agreed, since the original idea was more a conventional 3-act superhero movie and not necessarily wanting the very things David Dunn battling Mr. Glass on a rooftop in a blinding thunderstorm, that would make it a more conventional superhero movie. But A, I'm older and less grouchy about these things now, and B, the notion of getting what amounts to a crossover sequel and a wholly original cinematic universe is enough of a new gimmick to see what transpires. Besides, now that Shyamalan has his mojo back, he might as well get Unbreakable 2 out of his system so he can often make more original fables. He's certainly earned the right to do this, if it's what he really wants. It's not like Peter Jackson going back to Middle-earth after The Lovely Bones or Ridley Scott making Prometheus after Robin Hood flopped. He's coming back to a beloved property after a victory as opposed to a defeat. The poster in question reveals what those who saw the cinematic footage already know, that the movie starts as, or eventually becomes, a story of all three main characters, Bruce Willis, James McAvoy and Samuel L. Jackson, in an institution of some kind, which isn't the happiest ending in the world for David Dunn. I wish Robin Wright was coming back, as her relationship to Willis helped make Unbreakable more than just a superhero fantasy, but I'm heartened that Anya Taylor-Joy is back in some capacity. One of my issues with Split was that it used a sordid tale of teen girls being menaced and murdered by a scary dude for what amounted to the Predator supervillain origin story. That Casey is in Glass, depending on how she is used, may retroactively allow me to feel a little less icky about Split. And now I realize I just spent 725 words on a post about a poster, while barely discussing the poster. I suppose that's because the color-coded one sheet speaks for itself. It's a beauty. In Shyamalan, we trust, although that's coming from someone who never lost faith, even during the dark times. After all, it did turn out that the night was darkest just before the dawn. And 10 years later, I yearn for mainstream movies as unapologetically insane as The Happening, but that's a conversation for another day. If you like what you're reading, follow @ScottMendelson on Twitter and like the Ticket Booth on Facebook. Also, check out my archives for older work here. And a welcome surprise, the first teaser poster for Glass has been released online far in advance of the film's January 2019 release date. Indeed, M. Night Shyamalan pulled off his greatest twist since The Sixth Sense with his 2016 horror film Split, which turned out to be set in the Unbreakable universe, leading to the long-awaited Unbreakable sequel. Given the immense success of that James McAvoy-led film, Touchstone Pictures gave the go-ahead to finally produce Unbreakable 2 with Universal Pictures, the studio behind Split, distributing, and now the first Glass poster has been revealed to the world. The film, which could also reasonably be referred to as Split 2, brings back Bruce Willis as David Dunn, a former college football prodigy with superhuman strength, stamina, and invulnerability who was trained by Samuel L. Jackson's fragile Elijah Price, who as we all know turned out to be the supervillain of Unbreakable. Now with McAvoy's Kevin Wendell Crumb, a man suffering from dissociative identity disorder with 24 distinct personalities, on the loose, the paths of David, Mr. Glass, and the Beast converge. This teaser poster is pretty incredible, offering a tremendous use of color, while also providing a bit of a reveal in terms of where the story takes us. At the end of Split, we saw David Dunn watching the news from a diner, but in this teaser poster he appears to be incarcerated. We also see the Mr. Glass is institutionalized, while the Beast is either free or somewhere in between. I love the color scheme here, and while the palette for Split was pretty muted, I'm hoping this means Shyamalan is bringing a new aesthetic to the series with Glass. This is one of the most unlikely superhero trilogies ever made, but many rightly point to Unbreakable as a high point of the genre, so I can't wait to see some of Glass in action. In revealing the poster on Twitter, Shyamalan also announced the film will be at Comic-Con on July 20th, where he seemed to insinuate the first trailer will debut. For now, check out the Glass poster below. The film opens in theaters on January 18. From Unbreakable, Bruce Willis returns as David Dunn, as does Samuel L. Jackson as Elijah Price, known also by his pseudonym Mr. Glass. Joining from Split are James McAvoy, reprising his role as Kevin Wendell Crumb, and the multiple identities who reside within, and Anya Taylor-Joy as Casey Cook, the only captive to survive an encounter with the Beast. Following the conclusion of Split, Glass finds Dunn pursuing Crumb's superhuman figure of the Beast in a series of escalating encounters, while the shadowy presence of Price emerges as an orchestrator who holds secrets critical to both men. This riveting culmination of his worldwide blockbusters will be produced by Shyamalan and Jason Blum, who also produced the writer-director's previous 2 films for Universal. They produce again with Ashwin Rajan and Mark Bienstock, and Steven Schneider, who will executive produce.